if the board wishes to do so, they can request that a specific item be pulled off of the consent action items and discussed separately. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent action items as presented.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Stacy. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We will go now to first reading of our policies, 3141, 3310, and 8560.
Okay, so Jen has prepared these policies for first and second reading tonight for you. The reason that these three were kicked back to this meeting on first reading is, and all three are different. 3141 is a current policy that is undergoing some significant revision. With this revision, these are recommended changes from Montana School Boards Association. And so we didn't have their standard version of 3141, that's our non-resident student enrollment. And so we needed time to reconcile the language between our version of 3141 and their model version, and Jen has done that for you, and it's in your packet. 3310 is student discipline, and the only reason that one is on first reading again this month is because last month we had transposed the numbers and we didn't actually have the right policy for you to look at. So this is the 3310. There's just one change in it on page 2. And this is the one related to students' use of pronouns related to gender and student discipline. And then 8560 is a brand new policy. This is one that trustees had asked about. This is related to the display of certain flags. It articulates the official flags that are approved to be displayed on school campuses. The question that was brought up in the meeting last month was, what about people's personal vehicles that are parked in a school parking lot? What's our obligation to enforce the state law or policy in that situation? And I think I forwarded the email response I got from School Board Association to you guys. It's about a month ago, in case you forgot. But I think if I could summarize it, the answer was, well, we're not quite sure. And
So adopt the policy that ties you into that.
yeah. This is, and I think and I don't even remember who asked the question in the meeting last month, but what they're envisioning is a staff member or a student who has a certain flag that's not part of this list, that's in the window of their vehicle. Now is it our obligation to go out there, police the parking lots, call the parents, deal with the staff member, tell them they have to remove it, and is that even legal since it's their personal vehicle but it's parked on our property? And I think that the gist of it, what I read in the, was it Tony who responded?
Yep.
Yeah, was that basically School Board Association expects this to be litigated at some point, and a lot of those questions will be settled through that process.
Okay, let me get a feel from the board. Is there anyone interested in discussing any of the individual policies in greater detail? If you are, then I will be more than happy to break these up into individual policies and we can have that discussion. If there's not going to be, okay, Mark,
Well,
that's perfectly fine.
I just, and I don't want to discuss it in more detail, but I don't think we ought to adopt a policy that has no legal standing. Because if it's litigated and then we're found that then we're going to have to revisit it. And so I just think it's not wise to adopt something that has no basis in law or.
Are you talking about 8560?
Well, yeah, what you just discussed, the email says, well, we don't know what the answer to this is, and they essentially have sent out what we should adopt, and I don't think we should.
I would take a contrary view on that, though, Mark, in the fact that They, as far as they're concerned, that is law. Because it was proposed by the legislature, signed by the governor, placed in law. Whether or not it is legal, it has not gone through the courts yet, and whether or not that's gonna be, and that'll have to be defined by the courts. So pretty much what they're saying is that that particular item, flags within a car, that's just one of probably 100 different scenarios
Yeah.
that they're going to have to come up and contest in a court, and the courts are gonna have to decide whether or not that's acceptable or not. But right now, that was passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, so.
And this may be kind of why Martin was asking about.
I'd ask you to split them out,
Yeah.
so we can just make it.
This particular policy, I think, almost exactly mirrors the Montana code, the way it was
Right.
Yeah.
voted on by the legislature. So, like Scott's saying, right now it is state law, it's just vague, hazy, and has questionable rules of enforcement.
Yeah, so what is our,
Obligation.
well, no, you go out in the high school parking lot, there's some flag in the window. So what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
Let the AG's office come.
Huh?
I mean, let's split it out to be, you'd rather.
Yeah, let's go ahead and discuss these then separately. So, and then we can go ahead and have that discussion. So, the first policy we will be considering is policy 3141, our non-resident student enrollment. Do I have a motion to approve the revisions to policy 3141 in first reading?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion from Martin and second from Tiffany. Any questions or comments from the board?
I just have a clerical on page, I'm sorry if it's 2 or 3. 2, line 9, is that C supposed to be up on line 8?
No, that's 4 different,
Oh, it's A, B, and C.
yeah, A,
Okay.
B, C, and D,
Gotcha.
actually, because line 11 is D. And so that line 8 goes with the B bullet there, so,
Okay.
good question.
Any additional questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries, and we'll revisit this at our next meeting. Okay, next is consideration of the revision to policy 3310 under student discipline. Do I have a motion to approve the revision to said policy?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion from Kristen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Stacy. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about policy 8560 in greater detail. So let's go ahead and place a motion on the floor first, and then we'll go into greater level details. So can I get the motion to approve the new policy, that's new policy? Yeah, the new policy, to accept new policy 8560, display of flags and banners on district property.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and second from Tiffany. Okay, are there questions, comments from the board?
Yeah, so I guess the reason I was concerned was, I went and looked up the law, there's no reason we have to adopt a policy. The question, I mean, there's no legal reason, we don't have to, I mean, we're not gonna enforce it. It would, from what I've understood from Dan, is it would permit you to have an enforceable thing against an employee without involving law enforcement, I mean, I guess. But you could still tell them that they're violating state law, your interpretation, so it would still work. The problem with it really is that it only talks about government-controlled displays and maintaining, like, there's a lot of amorphous language in it, and that's what's gonna get litigated, not whether you can not whether the school can fly a pride flag or a Episcopal church flag, that's not the issue. The issue is like, what is controlled, so like, could you have a flag in a display case of, those sorts of things, and no one knows, from what I can tell. And I think that's what's gonna get litigated. My suggestion is simply like, I mean, there's no, if there is something that you thought was violative of it, I mean, I don't know that the policy's really gonna help you anyway. So, I mean, and I guess if we want to, like, what's the enforcement mechanism? There's no enforcement mechanism, other than like state law. I mean, I guess they could issue a citation for it, I don't really know. Maybe injunctive relief? I mean, I'd call the AG's office, I don't have any idea. And as long as that's the case, like, I would let it get settled out. Because the big problem is not that like, you know, so for instance, is, the school can control what you know, you can't have a pornographic, thing on your Stanley Cup, but could you have a cross? I don't know, maybe not.
Right.
You know, could you have a pride flag? I don't know. So like, I would just wait. And personally, my suggestion would be to not adopt it and let it get settled. And, because I think that's what's gonna happen, is it'll provide clarity, is the big thing. That's my argument. And I don't think there's any downside risk to not doing it. Or I guess if there is, I'd like to hear what it is.
The only contrary thing I would say to that, and I don't think you would expect me to argue any differently,
Yeah.
is that we've got a lot of these types of policies on there, and that I like to try to stay as consistent with the MTSBA's direction, just for maintenance of our board policies. When it's something nebulous like this, which I agree that it
Yeah.
definitely is, then it's, you know, I'm gonna err on the side of us following the consistent basis of it, not arguing
No,
whether or
totally.
not you're right or wrong.
And there sure could be value in that.
But it's just easier to maintain. I've seen before, and I think Jen can speak to it, where we've made changes to policy, and that's our prerogative, we definitely can do that. But it's tough to make sure that we have captured the most updated version, the correct one, which ones have changed. And so if we've got too many of these outliers, if you will, it's just a clerical
For sure.
nuisance, but not to say that that's any reason why we should or shouldn't. I'm just saying it's something we should consider.
And I would not suggest altering it or amending it or trying to interpret it, I just would adopt it. There's all kinds of state laws that we don't have policy about, so I thought.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Ben Mark?
Well, I agree with what he said. I also agree with what you said.
Spoken like a true politician.
So maybe get a haircut.
But, you know, the problem is, we're not going to enforce it, because unless we want to litigate it. And I don't think we do. I don't, you know, we're trying to be an education association or whatever, school district, and.
I would just as soon stay out of being the test
Right,
case.
being, you know, Montana, or, well, Montana versus, yeah, he's telling me,
Mhm,
of
yeah.
the school system, or whoever, or, so, I don't mind, and I know in our policy, we have a lot of stuff that could cause trouble if given the right opportunity. So, I won't vote against not adopting it, just on the.
No, you don't, you're not gonna vote against not adopting.
Well, whatever, you know, that's one of my things. And you're free to use it whenever you find yourself in this position. But if you understand what I'm saying, I'm not opposed to having it in there. I think it has the power of a dead stuffed animal, but, so, but what he said has merit, I mean, okay, that's enough, I said way too much, so. I hope nobody's recording this.
Any other questions, comments from the board? How about questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting Policy number 8560, display of flags and banners on district property under first reading, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no?
No,
Okay, so I believe that we've got, but let's just do a roll call vote, it's easier that way. Mark?
Aye.
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 Tiffany,
Sorry.
Stacy, Martin?
Aye.
And I am aye. So, 5 ayes and 1 no.
yeah.
And-
The General Lee was my big concern. That's the only reason.
Well, and you'll get another shot at it, Martin, with Tyrell actually in the room. Speaking of which, Mr. Murphy will be the chairman for next month's meeting. So you can go ahead and have at it with him. Give him a rough time at it. Okay, so now we'll move on to second reading of the policies that we reviewed last month.
Yeah, so these were all reviewed last month. Jen has gone through, edited, prepared them for second reading, so there are no changes from the way they were approved last month.
Okay. So again, like I said before, I would be more than happy to discuss these on a separate basis if need be, but otherwise I would also be willing to accept them as a block under second reading, either adoption or revision of those policies. So at this point in time, what's the consensus of the board? Anybody want to speak to an individual policy separately? Seeing none, then I would ask for a motion to accept under second reading the policy 3665, 5122, 2335, 5255, 3416, 2558, 2165, 3110, 3121, 3650, 5123, 2050, 5252, 8301, 2334, 2600, 2100, 2450, and 2150. Do I have such a motion?
Make the motion.
Motion from Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Tristan. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Was I able to speak faster than you were able to type?
Yeah.
You did well reading those, I was impressed.
I have them written down. I'll have to
Fair enough. I thought that's what you were giggling about, was what was.
It was funny. Yeah, that is what we were giggling about.
Okay. Okay, third and final item under unfinished business is our consideration of approval of the MTSBA's bylaws, resolutions, and officer placement, I should say. Last month, if you remember, we did have it on the agenda. We weren't able to bring it forward because the MTSBA did not have the information provided to us. With that being said, they've now sent over and then included in your board packet the discussions, the bylaws, resolutions, the due structure, and the officers' review. And so what we'll be doing is you're going to pretty much approve the items and then provide either Dan Rispens or myself the authority to go ahead and place the board's vote into the system. So that's pretty much what we have. We can do this on a separate basis if anybody has a concern of any of the things in the board's, or in the packet that was sent off by MTSBA. And I would be more than happy to try to explain anything that, any questions that anybody might have. I would say that for the most part, everything as far as the bylaws, resolutions, and the DNA of MTSBA did not change greatly. There were a few minor tweaks and things of it that have gone through, but there wasn't major. There was some change in the due structure, mostly because the last year when we had the due structure, MTSBA decided not to do their actual increase that they've done in the past. They froze their dues for a year just to try to give the school districts a little bit of help on it. But now they're going to kick back in as far as their usual practice of how they've done it in the past. So last year was the anomaly. This is more status quo on the due structure. So,
Are they making up for not paying dues last year? Is it double? Is it?
they're not making up. What they're doing is that it'll be placed into what it would be as if,
We're paying for this year?
yeah, they're not going to charge us what we didn't pay. Just the formula is going to be as if it would have gone through. So we're still not paying that additional money. It's just going to be that the formula used now will be current. And it's mostly just based on our budget, you know, what we're utilizing as far as budget goes. And I don't know what we've seen as far as increases go. Joe, you might be able to help us out on that a little bit, but usually it's in like the $200 to $300 range, I think, is what our dues increases typically run from one year to the next. And it's kind of,
Is it based on numbers?
on A
I
and
mean-
B. There is a portion of it that's based on A and B, but it's also based on what our overall budget is. So those individual school districts that pay a lot of money but have a very small enrollment will end up paying a higher amount than the opposite, so.
So in
And then
May
there's
of
floor
'24,
and ceiling
Oh, sorry.
as well, that goes in there, so that once it reaches a certain point, you don't, even though you may have an increase in budget authority or budget, I should say authority, but actual budget, obligated budget, it doesn't go any higher above that ceiling either, until you reach the next threshold.
I see.
Yeah, Joe, I'm sorry.
So the trustee membership in April of '24 was 9,613, and the trustee membership in May of '25 was 9,142, so they charge less
Right,
considerably. It does look pretty consistent though, strategy maintenance, 1,000. It doesn't really look like there's been huge increases, so probably going forward is probably what we'll see.
yeah, and strategy, those types of things are, those are ones that we specifically ask for help. So
Sure.
those are not dues associated, those are additions
Yeah.
that we pay, but.
And then the policy maintenance in May of '25 was 1,856. And policy maintenance in '24 was 1,785.
What's that,
We
Tristan?
pay for this headache?
This week? Unless you want to pay it, you got your own.
So on this sheet where it says fiscal year '27 dues revenue estimate, is this just related to our school where it says compared to '26, we're gonna pay an increase in $30,000?
No,
Okay.
no, that is for the
The whole
the
state?
whole, the-
Okay.
and a lot of the determination for that's not gonna come out until we pass our budget. I believe it's probably budget based, isn't it, Dan?
SBA dues.
Yeah. So when we pass the budget tonight, we would turn that in, and that'll be our 27 dues. So I mean, it's not this year's,
Part
it's
of the
next
one,
year.
yeah, what we're paying,
Yeah, it's not the next year's dues, it would be the 2027, so,
Yeah,
but it'll be based on what our budget is going into this.
yeah, you're right, Scott.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Tristan?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Or I guess I should ask, do we want to take this as a block, or do we want to? Because I don't believe, did we do a, yeah. Help me out, I lost track. Did we take a motion in a second?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So consensus is, do we want to take this as a block, or do we want to do these things separately?
Block.
Okay, then we can take them as a block. So at this point in time, we have for us, I had it. So before the board tonight, we have the principles and guidelines of MTSBA, the foundational elements of our organizational DNA, the fiscal year 2027 dues revenue formula, as well as the approval of Rick Cummings as president-elect and Jennifer Hoffman as the vice president. At this point in time, I would entertain a motion from the board to approve these recommendations and to provide me with the authority to enter our vote into the district, or to the association survey. Do I have such a motion?
Make a motion.
Okay, motion by Tiffany,
I'll second that motion.
second.
I just hoped we didn't have to repeat it, I was trying to follow.
I know.
Trying
Can
to
you-
follow all the things, yeah.
Can you repeat the wording that you wanted it to say? To approve the recommendations and to provide Chairman Walter.
No, get it from Tiffany. No, it's a motion to approve the recommended, or to make to approve the recommendations for the principles and guidelines, the organizational DNA, the dues structure, and the officers Rick Cummings and Jennifer Hoffman, and to provide me the authority to enter in the vote into the association survey.
I got what I said.
I'll change that.
Does that include who of you are going to?
Scott.
Okay.
Yeah.
And trustee Richardson, you were one, is that right? And Belucas was two?
And Martin was two.
I like that formality.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments for the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by saying no. Motion carries, thanks. Okay. Now we move on to new business, and the first item under new business is a consideration of a non-resident application for student enrollment for a newly hired school staff member. Dave?
And I believe this employment was approved in the June board meeting. But the employee didn't contact the central office about possibly bringing her kids until after the July board meeting, is why that's on this agenda tonight. She has two children that she wants to enroll, a kindergartner. Oh, second grader and an eighth grader. That's why I asked if you were gonna be here. So this is one of the carve-out exceptions in our policy 3141 procedures, so to allow newly hired employees the opportunity to get approved to bring their kids if they live outside the districts.
So at this point, I would entertain a motion to approve said application of a non-resident.
I would make a motion to approve the application for the two non-resident students of the newly hired school staff.
Do we have a second? I have a second from Stacy. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay. Number two is our consideration of audit services. Jill, Dan, which one are you gonna have?
Well, I can start and Jill can certainly chime in. Strom and Associates has been our auditor for us for quite a while. If you tracked such exciting things as school district audits, you would probably be aware that Jill and I are convinced that there may be two firms left in the state that actually conduct audits for school districts. I talked with a few superintendents last spring of districts similar in size to us or smaller who are paying between $30,000 and $50,000 for their annual audits. So it's getting, super expensive, and this fee has increased, for us as we've grown in size and our audit complexity has increased since we added the high school, and, our budgets have changed, our student A and B has changed. They look at all of our data, not just money, but also the data that we're reporting to OPI. It's a pretty exhaustive process. We've had overall good experience with Strom, although nobody really cared too much for the gentleman that they sent to the central office last year, but he's not coming back this year. Other than that, this is a 3-year agreement. It keeps our costs level for 3 years, which is nice for us from a planning perspective to be able to predict and know what that expense is gonna be. And we have a legal obligation to get the audits done and report back to the board and the community as to any findings that may come out of those audits. Do you wanna add anything?
Yeah, so they have stopped taking new clients. So if we were to not go forward with this one, we would not be able to go back probably. So we would be with the one that I know of 2, them and another, and Dan said, from what I understand, they were charging some between $50,000 and $75,000.
What's this one cost?
12,000.
23.
Or 23,000, sorry. Yeah, and the thing that's great, and granted for a new, is you can actually call, and he will, for the most part, you know, he's busy, whatever, he'll actually answer questions and help you. The other auditors charge, I think it's $50 an hour to answer any questions. So for a new business manager.
Yeah, it's been a luxury for us
It's
having
been-
Tom available
yeah.
to.
And he did
answer
promise he's
questions.
coming back. He's doing us, and it's in 2 weeks, if we go forward.
And how long have you guys been with Strong?
3 years.
Quite longer than that.
It's
Yeah,
been
no,
pretty long.
I would say close to a decade.
So they're familiar
But
with.
Yeah.
that's my question. It used to be you could only employ an auditing firm. You had to change.
For a certain
Seems to me
period.
it was every 3 years you had to. So that has changed.
Yeah.
I'm unaware of any rule tying us to that right now, and it's really, it's kind of a major issue if anybody's thinking about what they should advise their kids to become. An
Yeah.
accountant would be a really good
Yeah.
field.
There you go.
I'm telling my kids now
I
too.
think what had happened, Mark, is exactly what Jill was talking about, is that we ran out of auditors.
Yeah.
And so then for them to do that, all of a sudden, it takes off any competition
Yeah.
then associated with it, so.
Well, the irrigation district, which is under $1 million budget,
Audit proof.
it's $30,000 a year.
Is it?
And then they have some other special things that they send later, like a few $1,000s for this and that they didn't include in the original one, so.
So is there a typo on 2? Should it be starting
yeah.
July 1st of 2025,
20.
going to 28?
Oh. Wow, good catch. Jill, do you know the answer to that? Oh,
Can you
because that's
answer
what
it?
they're auditing.
Correct. So they go back a year.
They're
So
auditing-
this next year,
auditing
they're
last year.
auditing 24,
Thank you.
25.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so it's always kind of, yeah, it's always kind of a year behind because they're
They're
basically
auditing.
They're auditing
confirming.
last year's
Yeah.
expenditures.
So you'll notice on the TFS, it said it was for fiscal year 25 because that's the one we just finished, yeah.
Yeah, and just shouting out is that, Strum's done well for us. I've always been a little bit reluctant in sticking around with the same auditing firm year after year after year in the case that we get a little bit too cozy. That's why, although Jill wasn't happy with the actual auditor last year, the fact that he came in and ruffled some feathers, I thought was probably a good thing for us. I know that you don't agree, but that's something.
It was his bedside manner, wasn't it, mostly?
He wanted Scott to call in from work before every check that we cut and approve it manually on the computer.
Which wasn't going to happen,
Well,
trust me.
Uh-huh. Oh, I could go on and on, Mark.
But Tom does a good job as well, and
Very.
and Jill will be frustrated with Tom as well. And so that's just the nature of it. So if they're angry with the auditor, it kind of leads me to believe that they're doing a pretty good job. So,
That's a good way of looking at it.
sorry. Paul's
No, I mean,
strikes.
it
I gotta
was-
call him as I see him.
It was the first one I did by myself anyway, and so it was, he was just a little.
Jill was never happy with anything that the auditor came up with either, so, I'm not Jill, but Kim. Kim was never happy with anything that ever came out either, so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect anything otherwise. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve a 3-year proposal to have Strom and Associates serve as for audit services.
I will make that motion.
Okay, motion from Mark, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Krista. Questions or comments from the board? Questions, comments from the public? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, moving on now to review and approval of trustee financial summary.
So, I'll chat for a minute, and then I think Jill probably has some things she wants to share and opportunity to ask questions. This is our annual required document that we summarize the prior fiscal year. I am gonna tell you that I kind of forgot that this was the first time Jill had to go to this rodeo on her own, because Kim was around and kind of stole the show on getting the TFS and the budget report done last year. So Jill's worked her tail off getting this document prepared for you. It's a significant amount of work. There's a lot of chatter that goes on with the Masbo crew in the months of June and July as their business managers across the state are trying to prepare the TFS. And so we got it ready for you tonight. I know that Stacy had some questions. I know Jill tried to answer them via email, but we might still need to clarify or discuss those. And Jill, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add before approval.
I guess I'm just open for a question. Stacy, it makes sense what we were saying, and I'll go back and look because you're right, it's pretty, so Stacy had some questions about, I believe it's page 52, it was our so we have, all of our banking is done at US Bank. We have 5 accounts at Valley Bank, which is where our student activity account is, as well as our flexible dependent care, as well as our infinite campus payments, all of that. And so basically all the auditors want is the balance on here. So she had some questions about showing the revenues and the expenditures on student activities. And really, it all came from the journal voucher we had to do from the last, because really they just want you to make sure you get to that point, right? But I can go back and get more detail, but the TFS is really not the one that's gonna give you the detailed information about student activities.
Detail,
Yeah.
it was more of why there was such a drastic.
And I'll go back and try to research and try to figure it out. I do know that when Jacob was here, he came up with a different way to do the journal voucher, and so I did it how he wanted it. So I guess we'll see what Tom says when he comes in.
True.
But it was
we are collecting student fees
correct.
and gate fees for events, and that money almost entirely goes through a student activity account for athletics, so it doesn't touch this. Right.
Yeah, it was just a big, the 2025 value isn't even
Right.
half of the 2024 value,
Yeah.
so that's why it jumped out at me,
Yep.
so.
Good catch.
And I'll go back and look at it and see if there was a weird, and maybe I did put the wrong figures in there, but the balance, it came out and it balanced with the balance sheet, and I went back and verified that, but it could just be the journal
Yeah.
voucher. Yeah. And then the other question that Stacy asked was, so there's an expenditure report on here where you have to, so ESSA requires that all of the expenditures have to be based on the organization, so you can't just say the entire district spent $9 billion on salaries for the teachers. You have to say Eastgate spent this amount of money, and so it happens with all the revenues and all the expenditures. Well, this is the first year where we had to do the expenditures based on that. Prior to last year, it was only just that you had to tell what schools spent the special ed on. So it's any teacher that is quoted, has the program 286. And then last year they started with the teacher wages, and this year was teacher, special ed, I had to do the paraprofessionals, and I had to do books and periodicals. And so she noticed that it looked like last year we had no student aids. We hadn't spent any money on them. This year it looked like we had all this money, and it was just because of the reporting. Yep.
And there was also a noted decline in teacher salaries.
Correct.
And a lot of that is attributable to the failed mill levy and the positions that we reduced last year that we're adding back in this year.
And there's also teachers, part of their salaries are paid out of grants, which won't show in here, it would show in the 115.
I have a question on the school food services fund. Last year there was 39,000 for the fresh fruit and vegetables program, but this year there's none.
She chose not to do that program this year.
Okay, so that was a choice.
But we are going to do it again this next year, actually. She didn't have the staff to be able to do it, so she chose not to do it last year.
Any other questions? I'm gonna float a few of them, Jill, so bear with me.
Okay?
Number one is, it's probably a little bit easier. On page 29, we have got a slew of grants. Those are all those miscellaneous grants, donations, contributions, et cetera, from private sources.
Right.
Where do we get those? How are we, are there strings attached or associated with those grants and how they're spent? And then when you do that, is that captured at all? You know, as far as, you know, okay, this, say you've got a high school field fee contribution donations, 26, 27, 275. Is there anything in that report or anything that you have that would say, okay, those monies have to go into a certain expenditure?
So the high school fields,
And that's just an example, but you
Yeah.
can use any of them.
okay, so any of the ones that are title grants or like the Carl Perkins, the MTSS, all of those, they have huge guidelines on what you're allowed to use it for. And when I go to get the money, I have to actually put the expenditures in there. Because we budget within different categories, and I have to send copies of purchase orders, I have to send copies of payroll documents, all of that. The other ones, like, and it would be specific to certain ones. So like if you were to look at, sorry, I just flipped through my page. All right, I got one more page, there we go. So some of these have been around forever, and they're, and to call it a grant is a little bit misleading. It's called grant because of the 115 code, but like if you look at the, like if you go down and look at the Montana Tech grant, it basically zeroes up at the end of the year. That is really the money for, what do they call it? It's like a talent search, and they pay 2 of our high school teachers and 2 of our East Valley Middle School teachers, and I don't know exactly what they do for the talent search for the so it's Murphy, yeah.
Yeah, so the trio is students who come from lower economics, and they work together at lunch to like build their skills to surpass where they have been. So like multiple directions like businesses, or like they work on social skills and things like that.
So they give us money, we basically, they approve a certain stipend for each of those, and then after we've paid it, I basically send them what we've paid along with all of the contributions like Social Security, Medicare, all of that. And then they refund it. So at the end of the year, it zeroes out. And and that's exactly, it's only those 4 people that were approved. We get the money for them. This is kind of our placeholder while we're waiting, and it also shows our expenses. So that way I can tell that we coded it correctly and that we basically spent the exact money that we got. But if you look at, let's say you were to look at the Tiger Fund, we get money each year that a lot of times we'll get donations. A lot of times we'll have people that come in and say, I want to donate from my church, from my bank to the Tiger Fund. And then we have, last year and this year, we had Brandon Crusat, who kind of manages that. And Brandon, what do you use the Tiger Fund for?
Students who just need extra assistance.
Right.
Clothing,
And-
school supplies.
And the thing that's great about these is the money rolls over each year. Okay, so if we don't use all of it, it rolls over and he can spend it next year.
Okay, and so my question, you're right there. My question then is with the strings attached and how we're spending those funds, it's not necessarily captured in the TFS,
Right.
but it is captured in some other manner so that there's accountability associated. So we're not able to spend monies from one account and then just putting it into something that wasn't what its intended use was for.
Correct.
Yeah, some are very strict, like Jill was saying, like the title grants or Perkins, they have their own approved budget with OPI, and
Okay.
we can't veer
Right.
outside those
And those would
lines.
make sense.
Yeah.
Most of those ones that are like some type of federal
Yeah.
grant would make sense. It's
Other
more-
areas like the field fees or the iPad fees, those have an intended use and purpose, and then were set up by the district years ago. And so it's partly our job to ensure that those funds are used for what they're intended for, and then that's part of the audit too. He's gonna take a look at those expenses and our backup for those expenses and say, hey, this doesn't quite fit what you said you were gonna do with
And
this money. Or
that's exactly where I was trying
He pulls
to
the
get
points,
at, was
yep.
because my concern is, my concern is never on the individuals that we have on staff. It is the individuals that we are going to hire in the future that I am ever concerned about. So if somebody comes in and says, oh, we don't need to have that kind of cash flow within that deal, let's shove it into the swim program. Whoa, that wasn't the intention of what that was, and so what kind of internal controls do we have to make sure that that gets spent in the location that it was intended for?
That's a great question.
Yep.
Okay, then one specific, and this is, Dan, you might need to help me, walk me through this one, but page 30, the innovative tax credit donation.
Yes.
Oh.
I noticed that we did receive that, and it went into fiscal year 2025, or 24-25.
Yep.
It keeps rolling over.
What's the mechanics of that?
So there-
First off, that's another question, is the innovative tax credit donation, what strings do we have? I'm sure we do have some strings that we have to spend it on, it's gonna be some type of innovation.
Yep.
And then when do we spend that? Because I noticed that wasn't spent in the previous fiscal year, even though we received it in the previous fiscal year.
So the rules are a little loose with it. I'll be pretty honest with you about that. There was some debate when the donation was coming in as to what say the donor has in the use of the funds. I was actually under the impression that a donor could direct, like, I want to give money for the ag program to buy a tractor. So that's why I'm making this donation. I'm not really sure that that's 100% accurate anymore based on all the reading that I did about the donation. But there are guidelines as to what the money can be used for in the law, very similar to the Transformational Learning Grant. And it's all about innovation, offering students something that the district would not be otherwise able to offer to students. We're planning to use some of that money this year to offset the career coach, which is the advanced opportunity position that we fill. Because we'll use some of our advanced opportunity money for it, but then we'll need to backfill the rest of that position. And the description fits that. Moving forward, if we continue to get those kind of donations, the use of those funds as well as advanced opportunity, that it's hopefully become a permanent fixture in our budget, is probably something that the committee of the board is probably going to want to weigh in on at some point.
Is there a time frame of when we have to spend that? Or
Nope.
do we just, you said you can carry it on?
Just carry it
from
on, it
year to
rolls
year to
over,
year?
yep. And we actually asked the gentleman who donated it what he would like it to be spent on, and he didn't really care. And so it had come in at the end of the year, so we had already done the budgeting, but we had kind of talked about it last year. Because for the career coach for advanced opportunity, we're only allowed to use 20% of the allocation towards their salary, so we had to come up with other money, and we thought this would be perfect for it.
Okay. And so I guess you did answer the question, is that we don't have to necessarily spend it within a given fiscal year.
No. So we're
I
still
just
working.
wonder whether or not our auditors are gonna question
Yeah.
that. Is that you got
I
a chunk of
expect
cash
it.
that it's just gonna sit there in a pot? and
Well,
they're gonna
well,
wonder-
yeah, and he may have more, guidance on it.
Yeah.
He might know a little bit more than us, but yeah, there's a lot of things that are happening that are sort of ambiguous, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Isn't there a limit on, is that not the limit?
That
on
is the
what can
limit.
be
Yep.
That's the per
donated
person
for
limit,
under
yeah.
the tax?
Yep.
And OPI did assign the program code and the source code for it, so they are tracking it.
Okay. Which I would assume, so somebody from the state government's gonna have to, because that's,
Yep,
those are funds that were
state
paid,
taxes,
yeah,
yeah.
state taxes are. Okay, those are all I had. Any other questions for the board? Okay, I would entertain a motion then to approve the trustee financial summary for fiscal year 2024, 2025.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark. Any additional questions, comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Good job, Jill. I know that was probably a little nerve-wracking to go through, but much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that we've got last year's summary approved, we now need to look into our fiscal year 2026.
All right, Jill left you a hard copy,
Updated page.
updated page, because we found an error shortly before the meeting that we needed to correct in the budget report.
It didn't include the money we were receiving for the added district tuition. And so if you notice from the other one, it lowered the mills even in the general fund from, what was it, 71, I think, yeah,
Yep.
and it's now 62. So I highlighted those three areas that it affected, or the two areas, but I gave you both pages of the general fund.
So one thing I'd like the board to be able to see when we look at this stuff is comparison of last year to this year, and then what our March projections were. And there's a few things that I was hoping to point out and share with you, and then have an opportunity for questions here. In the general fund, there's not really any surprises. We talked about it last month. You guys anticipated where we were gonna be with that. One area is that our reserves did drop a little bit, and that's partly due to the mechanism of the actual budget increasing, so the reserves didn't drop as much as the percentage changed a little bit. So we'll be wanting to keep our eye on that. But the big areas that had adjustments are transportation. If you'll take a look at that on the budget report page, it looks like this one here. If you look at last year's transportation, we set a transportation budget of $945,000. We're recommending that we dial that transportation budget back a little bit to $895,000. And that's in spite of the fact that the drivers are getting a pay increase and that we don't know what's gonna happen with the cost of fuel. Because we did end the year with some additional funds, or not additional funds, but we had unspent funds in that budget that were rolling over, and that's the, when you look at transportation, you look at the column F, which is the unreserved fund balance reappropriated, that's the $139,000 that was left this year that we didn't spend. But the big changes are happening in column D, H, and I. And these are legislative changes. So last year, we anticipated when we set our budget, $166,000 coming from the state for our transportation reimbursement from the state and the county. This year, that number is $266,000. So that was a legislative change that happened in the 2025 session where they increased the formula that they use to determine the rider reimbursement rate that we get. And you can see it's significant.
Yep.
So between lowering the budget, carrying over some money from this year, increased revenue from the state, our local property tax for transportation is dropping from $778,000 last year to $489,000 this year. And so the mills are declining as well. So that's one big area of change. Bus depreciation adjusted quite a bit. The adopted budget of $922,000, be aware that we have a bus on order that's gonna cost close to $250,000 that we're gonna have to pay for probably next month. So that's a big chunk of that. And bus depreciation builds and grows over time as we assess and update and maintain our fleet. The local portion of bus depreciation, which is column H, is increased, and that's partly due to the fact that the new Lion bus is now in the depreciation schedule. The next one that changes significantly is tuition. In last year, we budgeted $700,000 in tuition. This year, we're recommending that we reduce that amount, which I didn't really anticipate we were gonna be able to do. And in fact, in March, if you look at Resolution 241, we actually thought we were gonna increase tuition $129,000. We're recommending that we reduce that amount because we have the budget to meet our obligations. And what we have to do with tuition this year that we haven't had to do before is pay other districts for our students that are attending there. So we have budget there to accomplish that, and also our allowable special ed costs that we can pay out of tuition. We should be able to meet both of those obligations with the $593,000 budget that we set there. That reduces the local tax from $312,000 last year to $73,000 this year. So those two big areas are a reduction. I'm not guaranteeing that people are gonna see a noticeable decrease on their property tax bill, but it is something that I wanted you to see and be aware of, that we were able to make those adjustments. Next year, we'll have to tweak tuition again, but my understanding on non-resident students is the county-wide equalization of mills will take care of those tuition payments between districts. Is that in line with your understanding?
Absolutely no idea.
Okay. So certainly I have something to learn about that.
Yeah.
So I'll be working on that between this year and next year, but I think that tuition payments are taking care of themselves next year, again, because of legislation that was passed in the session. Other than that, the remaining funds are pretty self-explanatory. Adult education is 1 mil, that's what we typically levy. We don't use non-operating. Our technology, we levy $93,000, that's the levy that we passed probably over 20 years ago. The flex fund, there is no local levy for flex. There was last year because of transformational learning, and we were able to leverage that transformational learning match with a small levy in adult ed. But we don't, the transformational learning grant is done, and now we're just spending the remaining transformational learning funds that we have. And then the other big change that you should be aware of is, and this again was a legislative change, is in building reserve. And if you look, our adopted budget in building reserve is 1.1 million, which is a nice amount of money that we have in there that protects us for ongoing maintenance that we need to do for our buildings. For instance, we're getting part of the roof replaced at Radley this summer. And also is protects us in case of an emergency. And part of the reason it's built up a little bit is because during COVID, we used a lot of our federal ESSER dollars to cover a lot of our building maintenance costs. But the big change in building reserve happens in the other revenue column, which is column G. Last year, we received $140,000 from the state, and we could receive that $140,000 if we taxed locally $112,000. This year, we're receiving $201,000 from the state, and we're taxing locally $107,000. So we're lowering our local tax by $5,000 and receiving an additional $60,000 from the state of Montana, and that was again a change in legislation in the way that's calculated. So I wanted you to be aware of that. One other interesting tidbit that I wanted to share is that, and this surprised me, but it shouldn't have, is that our taxable valuation actually dropped almost $6 million from last year to this year. And based on everything I'm reading, is that is a result of the new property tax legislation and the way taxable value is calculated, and that it's a lot of districts across the state saw a decline in their taxable value. And so that means our mills that we assess raise less money, so it ends up kind of being a little bit of a juggling match between dollars and mills. With that, I'll be quiet. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add, or if there are questions.
I don't really have anything to add, but open for questions that we could hopefully answer here.
Hopefully.
We could definitely answer here.
There you go. Any questions for Jill or Dan? I had one, and this is probably just my ignorance, but I look at fiscal year 2026 and look at the debt service associated with K-12, and it says, you know, the district property tax 2.13 million, and then one, and I'm not sure what tax jurisdiction one is. Maybe that would help explain that a little bit, but I noticed that in that it went from 143 in fiscal year 25 to 602,000 in this fiscal year. I figure that's a healthy jump in there, and I'm trying to think for life of me, what have we encumbered as far as debt that would increase our debt service?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know.
Stump me.
So when OPI, okay, so we do have two, right? We have the, what they call the high school bond, and then the elementary. And the elementary was the first one. And we get a guaranteed tax base amount from OPI. So OPI sees us as having one account, which is 150. The county required Kim to open two different funds so that they could track the two different. Okay, so when OPI sends the guaranteed tax base payment, it always goes into the 150, which is the lower one. And so it could possibly, if you add the two together, possibly it could. But we kind of talked about it. You have to do journal vouchers because so the 150 account is basically both of them combined as far as OPI is concerned. The 150 and 152 are the two separate ones on the county side, and when they get the money, they always stick it to the 150, which is the lowest one. And so we do journal vouchers to move the money over, but you really don't have to, because when you do the TFS, they morph together.
Our adopted budget, they pretty much match, which that's what I would expect.
Yeah.
That's not, that I don't have any questions with that. But then when we start looking at the differential between where that comes from.
Shows the elementary.
It gets a little weird.
This sheet, is matching up with that one that's on this sheet. So this amount matches up with this amount of your one.
So if you go
Right.
based on what they.
But not with the district property tax, that's what we're, what was that, Joe?
So if you go with originally what the county posts, the one account was negative because it's the higher payment, but the guaranteed tax base payment from OPI goes into the other one that's lower. So if we don't do the journal voucher, the one account shows that the balance was like a negative 20,000, and you have to add them together, and it's very.
So we probably exceeded the amount that the state is supporting us, and so now it's going to our local taxpayer?
No, so the money that the state gives us is really supposed to go to our high school district, because that's our highest payment, it's the most recent one. It's what we owe the most on. But they post it to the other one because all they know of is the one account, does that make sense? So when we do the two separate ones, as far as the county is concerned, we have to do journal vouchers to move it over into the correct one. So if you go with basically what they have. So the theory is, according to OPI, is that they combine as far as that, and it's the same thing on the TFS, it only goes in one, they add them together. So my guess is it has to do with, when we did the journal voucher, we didn't do them completely over, we left half and half. And they're supposed to balance out.
Okay, and that somewhat makes sense, Jill.
Yeah.
My concern is that in fiscal year 2025, our taxpayers spent in excess of $2.4 million for debt service. We are proposing now that our local taxpayers are going to be paying $2.7 million into it. So that at that point, I guess my question is where are we paying and are asking our taxpayers for an additional $300,000 at the local level, because that's what shows up in our millage as well.
I think we're gonna have to dig back.
We're
into
gonna have
last
to
year, 'cause
call
look at-
OCI.
Look at your carryover from in last year in 25, the elementary bond had an unreserved fund balance reappropriated of $725,000, so that was carryover. And we'll have to go back and see where that came from.
They had a pretty large guaranteed tax base, I think,
Yeah, and
last
that,
year.
so
it
that
all went to
fluctuates
that
from year
account.
to year, and that's the state.
Correct.
It's not major maintenance money, it's capital improvement money that comes from the state. And so when districts pass a bond, when the state has money to subsidize a district's bond, or all the district bonds around the state, they push that money out to the districts. Some years they have it, and some years they don't have very much, and that's my guess is where a big part of that
Yeah.
fluctuation is coming.
This year was only, I think, a little bit less than 400,000. Last year it was like 750,000.
Okay, so then I'm gonna reiterate my question then, and I don't understand the mechanics of it, and I don't wanna become an accountant, so I don't wanna do that at all. But the way it still looks right now is that there's a $300,000 increase in debt service that is going to our local taxpayers.
Right.
And is that the,
And
is
that's
that
the
the case?
bond that was passed. And when we get the payment from the state, it reduces the amount of mills that we have to assess locally. When we don't get that payment, then that's part of that fluctuation, and you're right.
So
That is
that
increasing.
will increase, the
Yeah.
millage that we've got,
Correct.
so it's.
On your property tax bill,
Okay,
you'll see it.
that's exactly what I was questioning. Okay.
Sorry, I knew what you were
No.
asking and I couldn't explain it correctly.
Well, it's one of those things where I want this to be eyes wide open. I mean, if there's going to be an increase in debt service associated with local taxpayers, even though I see that the rest of our levies are looking like they're going down significantly, a lot of that's gonna be made up in debt service
Debt
just
service.
this year. Now, that may
It
happen,
may
that might
fluctuate
adjust
in
again
each
next year, the following year, but it's still going to be something that they'll see on their property taxes.
And when I asked OPI why it changes, she said there's really no guarantee on the dollar amount.
Sure.
And so you pretty much just wait
And that
and see what
makes
you get.
sense, that does make
Yeah.
sense, it's just a matter of,
Yeah,
what the expectation's going to be.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2025-2026 fiscal year budget.
Make motion.
Okay, motion from Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Tiffany. Additional questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, Joe. Yeah, appreciate it. That's not an easy task, I know.
I appreciate all the questions, 'cause it's on our toes. Gives us stuff to talk about later this week.
ponder.
Yeah. Questions that we can ask Tom in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so next item on our agenda is our consideration of the RBHI memo of understanding for suicide screening.
Okay, so I think we're going on 5 or 6 years now that we've been partnering with the Rural Behavioral Health Institute. And this is an annual MOU that we enter into with them to partner for them to come in and conduct suicide screening with our middle school and high school students.
Okay, that's it. Good.
They do a great job. They have, it's an online automated system that's, that assigns each student an anonymous ID number that only the school counselors have the code to unlock. And then, and they use a combination of several different screeners that we had been using actually prior to our partnership with them. In an online fashion that's easier for kids to answer the questions. And so it works pretty well.
Okay. I would entertain a motion then to approve the memo of understanding with the Rural Behavioral Health Center for suicide prevention screening suicide prevention screening services.
I'd make a motion to approve the MOU.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, our sixth and final item under new business is the MTSB's call for resolutions. This is an opportunity for individual school districts to ask for resolutions to be considered by the board of directors and by the delegate assembly of MTSBA, and this helps drive the things that we just passed, the DNA, the resolutions, the guidelines and principles of the organization, etc. For example, the East Helena and Lockwood we decided to put out a resolution to allow, or actually to direct MTSBA to advocate on our behalf to expand to a K-12 school district when that happened several years back.
Right.
It became a very contentious issue. There were districts, Helena, Missoula, Billings specifically, but other school districts that were dead set against it. And so they were against the resolution. The elementaries, the K-8 elementaries were for the resolution. They had to work through all of the conflict and the issues associated with it. 1 year it failed, and the double A's were ecstatic. They were all happy about it and said, yep, that's great. And then the following year we took another shot at it. This time we got it passed, and then the double A's were upset, saying it's unfair that they're gonna be advocating against our wishes. We're gonna take our membership and we're gonna leave MTSBA over it. And I mean, it got to be that ugly. And I had conversations with those same double A individuals saying, yeah, you weren't too upset about it when it was, what it was a year ago, and now all of a sudden it's on the other foot that you're upset. But those are the types of things that can go in. That resolution that East Helena had proposed that was successfully introduced and ran forward was CT services in our middle schools. So we were able to get enhanced funding at the state level for middle school CT. So where this goes from here is that if any member of the board or our board would like to throw out a resolution, they have asked or called for those resolutions to come forward. There's a process that you have to go through with it in order to get it under consideration. I'd be more than happy to help or assist any one of the board members if there was something that you were interested in providing as a resolution. But I just wanted to provide it as an opportunity. If there's nothing that's at tip of anybody's tongue, then I'm good with that, and we can just move forward. But you might want to think about it in the future if there is something that pops in your head. So, any questions, thoughts, or resolutions that we'd like to see?
But I would remind you, want to ask about attendance, okay? Or attendance at the conference.
Oh,
Just as a reminder, I was suddenly,
okay.
Yeah.
It's not a resolution, I was just saying, it's
Yeah,
in that vein.
Yeah, caught me off guard, Martin.
Are you talking about them, so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's not, then like I said, just keep that under consideration. This is an information slash action. If anybody had it, I would be able to move forward. But if not, just as an information item, just keep that in the future. Okay, now, last item, although it's not on the agenda, was just yay, nay, as far as MCEL registration goes.
Eric and Tiffany. Anybody else know for sure if you're gonna be able to go to
When
MCEL?
is it again?
October
14, 15, 16?
Yeah, it's the,
13, 14, 16.
it's the,
I do registration from the school.
15, yeah.
You don't need one?
I do.
Oh, you do need one?
Yes.
Jen, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Scott needs
I
one.
do. They require, us to, even though I'm board, on the member of the board of directors,
Yeah.
I still have to
16,
get,
17, 18.
yeah, no.
Thursday, Friday.
No, that one I think I can handle on my own, but, no, just the registration.
You can think about it.
So, they pay all the other expenses on it, but they don't pay the registration.
And you can register, we can get you registered after that too.
Okay. Any others, or did we get listings? I know Tyrell is definitely a no.
I'm
Yeah.
also not able to.
Okay.
I'm leaning towards no. Somebody's gotta watch the kids.
But it is in Helena, right?
Yeah, it is,
Helena.
it's here.
And you thought there might be an opportunity to,
Chain them to the carousel, they'll be right there, have to keep walking around the carousel.
you thought there might be an opportunity to like go to some, like, some of it this time, like certain
Yeah, I
days?
think if we register you, you can come and go. It's definitely like, if you wanna catch the keynotes or if
What's that?
they're,
You get to hang out with me for a few days.
I would relish that opportunity. But,
You are gonna be there in 50?
I'm gonna be there, yeah, the whole time, yeah.
Good, good.
What do you
there's
say, yes,
information we learned.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna be able to dance by the end of this week, I'm sure.
Well-
Including just learning about this group that puts us in a different spot, that we can communicate on a different level, personal, and find out, you can find out about me, I can find out about you, and then, you can make your own opinion.
Well, and what I'll say, and I've said this in the past, it makes me feel better if I reiterate it, each and every one of you provides a tremendous amount of service to the East Helena Public School District. And as a result of that, there is absolutely no expectation that you would go to these meetings and stuff over and above your service. You're already doing a large commitment to the school district. But with that being said, I have found that there's a lot of benefits associated with attending these things, including exactly what Mark was saying. You know, you're networking with the different school districts, and also some of the questions that are being asked as far as how do the dues formula get established? How do policies get done? Why do we do policies in such fashion? Those types of questions come up during a lot of those think tank questions, or those, not think tank, but during those seminars. And those discussions are very valuable. So if you have an opportunity, I strongly encourage you to attend, and I think it's a valuable use of school district's dollars to be able to send you to these types of events. So,
first time I've ever felt real pressure from Jen.
She gave me a stand.
Yeah, totally, yeah, she's like,
So if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will call this meeting adjourned. Our next scheduled meeting for the East Helena Public Schools is September 8th. Over at East Helena High is what I have listed on here, so it'll be at the high school. And our own Tyrell Merkel will be the presiding officer, since we'll be in DC for my COSLA efforts, so. And with that, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
thanks, Scott.
right, it is a little cheaper, but it's saved you the drive to
Well, so now my question settles, like, what was here today when you were coming, why'd you come today?
It is.